ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. We are reading from the book Meditation and Spiritual Life by Swami Yatiswarananda. We are in chapter 25 on formless meditation, and we are about to begin the section which is impersonal meditation. You may also practice any one of the following types of formless meditation. 1. The aspirant imagines he is a fish swimming in the one undivided and eternally indivisible ocean of existence, knowledge, bliss, that is Satchitananda, without any obstruction whatsoever. 2. The aspirant imagines he is a bird flying in the infinite sky without anything to stand in its way anywhere. 3. The aspirant is like a pot fully immersed in water, water inside and water outside. 4. The aspirant imagines himself to be a point of self-conscious light immersed in the one indivisible ocean of light. You identify yourself with the point of light, then you feel it to be a part of an infinite sphere of light. Finally, make your point of light expand or make it merge in the vast light, or let it move anywhere. But everywhere nothing but light is left. This is a wonderful form of meditation. A little study of astronomy gives us a sense of the vast. We cannot think of the infinite, but we can think of the vast, and then slowly go on making it bigger and bigger. Think about the vastness of space and the inconceivable sizes of stars and galaxies. In the Brihad Aranika Upanishad it is said, the infinite dwells in all the stars and planets. It is inside them and outside them, and the same infinite is in human beings too. Yaschandra tarake nishtanschandra tarakantaraha yanchandra tarakam naveda yasya chandra tarakam shariram yaschandra tarakamantaro yamayati eshata atman taryayamya mritaha. This was the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 3.7.11. Instead of thinking of the finite, the little, the petty, the small, it is better to think of the vast, the infinite, the stars, the solar system, the Milky Way, and the nebulae, which are new solar star systems in the process of formation. And then dissolve everything, this earth, the sky, the solar systems, everything, in the infinite undivided ocean of light. In the well-known Purusha Sukta, one of the most ancient and sacred hymns of the Hindus, the Vedic Rishi says, all this manifested universe forms only a fragment of the divine glory. Etavanasya mahimato jyayanscha purushaha Padosya Vishwa Bhutani. This is from the Rig Veda 10.90.3. Such a small bit after all. Whenever our mind shrinks as a result of dwelling on small, petty, mean, trifling things, we should try to think such elevating thoughts. Think of the vastness of the sky, of the vastness of the innumerable solar systems, but see that you think of the divine in such manifestations, the divine in nature, the divine in the sky, not of nature as the divine. Sometimes for our concentration, we need some definite forms, either anthropomorphic or non-anthropomorphic. Otherwise, concentration is not possible for most people. Without a definite form for an object, we are not able to fix our mind and have it concentrated. Most people are not at any rate able to do so. So for concentration, something definite, something finite is necessary. In this case, the choice of a finite form is a question of temperament. When we become adepts in concentration, let us try to meditate on the infinite that dwells in the finite. If you are able to connect the infinite and the finite and look upon the finite as a manifestation of the infinite, that meditation is something very grand. But the finite must never be taken as the divine. The aspirant has to see the divine standing at the back of all finite forms, but he should not take the finite forms as the divine. In the first case, he stresses the divine. In the second case, he stresses the form, which is very dangerous and leads to delusion. When we meditate upon the form as manifestation infinite, we have both intensity and extensity. Such a meditation is very grand if done in the proper way. In the midst of all these meditations, we should not forget the most important fact of our being souls. Whether we meditate on a finite form or on the formless, we should look upon ourselves as souls, and we should always remember that the divine is more real and vaster than the soul. As Shankaracharya says, O Lord, it is the waves that get merged in the ocean and not the ocean in the waves. So when all limitations are removed from me, it is I who become merged in thee, and now thou in me. So this was the reference here. See chapter 21, footnote number 27. We can take a moment to find chapter 21, footnote number 27. Number 27. I think the reference is off because I don't think there is, so I think the reference is off. It must be some other chapter because chapter 21 doesn't have that many footnotes. Be absorbed in the self. In the highest states of spiritual consciousness, the aspirant forgets the phenomenal world altogether. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, this idea is conveyed by the example of a hunter aiming at a bird. The hunter was so much absorbed in his work that he was not conscious of a noisy bridal procession which went by. This is from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, page 721. It is a fundamental law in spiritual life that whatever we take to be real draws our whole energy, our intellect, thoughts, and actions. If we take this world to be real, we become preoccupied with it. The scientist is intensely preoccupied with abstract ideas of the universe. If you want to turn to spiritual life, this world should cease to be more real than the spirit. One cannot be even a dualist unless one believes that God is more real than the whole world. Even the dualist regards the world as a lower order of reality than the divine. The divine alone is eternal and immortal. No religion gives to the world the same status of reality as to the divine. Monism asserts right from the beginning that the world is unreal and the divine alone is the only reality. Dualism begins by taking the world to be real and then tries to seek God who gives reality to it. However, when superconsciousness dawns upon the aspirant, whether he began as a dualist or a monist, the phenomenal world disappears from his consciousness. Dualism and monism are terms which refer to the relationship between the soul and the divine. This is an important point to note. Whether the world is real or unreal is not the point in question. What is more important is to stress the greater reality of the divine and establish contact with it. How to connect our individuality with the divine, how to connect the part with the whole, this is our task in spiritual life. And to the extent we succeed in doing that, to that extent we become more spiritual, illumined, free. The secret lies in changing one's concept of oneself. If we identify ourselves with our bodies, then this world and everything connected with it comes to us as a matter of course. The divine becomes real to us only when we regard ourselves as souls. How to counteract the thought that we are bodies, that we are men and women, that we are doers and enjoyers. Raise a strong contrary thought current. Make this so intense and vivid that all other wrong thoughts fade away. Every spiritual aspirant, whether he is philosophically a monist or a dualist, must do this. He must regard himself as the self-luminous Atman, unattached to body and mind. He should reflect deeply on this truth until it sinks deep into his personality and transmutes his outlook on life. The secret of attaining purity lies here. The Atman is eternally pure and is our real nature. Without realizing our true nature, we cannot attain real purity, however much we may try. In fact, it is the identification of the mind with the Atman, with the mind, the senses, and the body that is the very basis of all impurity. Next section. By thinking of the Atman, we become the Atman. The mind is not something conditioned once and for all by heredity. Its nature is dynamic and can be changed by proper discipline. It has the tendency to record every form of experience that passes through it until the recorded part becomes our nature, so to speak. By thinking about a bad person, we imbibe his attributes and become bad ourselves. By meditating on a holy personality, we imbibe his purity and virtues and become holy ourselves. This is a psychological law operating in all human beings. This law was discovered in India long ago and has become the basis of all types of spiritual meditations. Even the monist recognizes the value of thus transforming the mind by dwelling on the nature of the higher self. So you find the follower of the path of jnana meditating on the great Upanishad dicta like thou art Tattvamasi and I am Brahman or Aham Brahmasmi, or on the stanzas describing the non-dual experience written by Shankara and other masters. For example, the Nirvana Shatkam. By intensely concentrating the mind on the nature of the real self, one can awaken in oneself the forgotten memory of the self, but intensity of concentration should be there. The whole mind should flow towards the goal aimed at. However, this is not possible unless we have previously purified our mind and brought about a total change in our outlook on the phenomenal world. Without intense dispassion for the world and its pleasures, one cannot turn one's whole mind towards the Atman. The mind in the case of ordinary people is restless. It is being continually drawn out in different directions by the sense objects and is itself driven hither and thither by impulses and desires. Whatever excuses we may put forward for our actions, we have to admit the power of attachment to sense objects. A man who is perfectly attached to the world can instantly turn his whole mind towards the Atman. By constant meditation, he realizes that he is the Atman and not the mind of the body. In the Bhagavatam, the above idea is conveyed through the lesson that an Avadhuta, wandering monk, learned from a cockroach and a wasp. So this is from the Bhagavatam 11.9.23. It is well known that the wasp carries cockroaches, caterpillars, spiders, etc. to its nest after paralyzing them with its sting. It then lays eggs near these helpless victims and seals the nest. The grubs that hatch from the eggs eat the insects and grow into wasps. The whole cycle of a wasp life was probably not discovered in India, but the presence of cockroach etc. in its nest was well known, and this had given rise to the popular belief that the cockroach, by intensely meditating on the wasp, became the wasp itself. This forms the basis of the parable of the wasp and the cockroach, widely used in Hindu literature. This does not mean that this kind of meditation on the self is a kind of auto-suggestion. Though the reality is beyond the experience of the ordinary man's mind, it can be directly realized by the purified mind. Hence, meditation in this case is not on the unreal, but on the real. Meditation only prevents the rising of thoughts contrary to the truth which shines by itself. The Atman is self-luminous and ever-present behind all thoughts. When the thoughts are stilled through concentration and the ignorance covering the Atman is destroyed, the self shines forth. the double process of worship and analysis. Ordinarily, our thought life and physical life imply complete identification with our gross body and our subtle body, and since it is not possible for us to get rid of this false identification all of a sudden, we should at least see that we minimize it as much as possible and try to lessen this false identification more and more as we proceed towards the goal. The trouble is that at the back of all our emotions there is this idea that we are men and women, that we are personalities and individuals. At the same time, we also feel that we are spiritual aspirants or devotees of God. But this feeling can be made a means of transcending the idea of personality. We may keep the idea that we are aspirants or devotees and may worship a male or female deity. But along with this idea, a certain amount of self-analysis is absolutely necessary, for even the idea of the aspirant and the devotee is ultimately a false conception. Since we are not able to follow the path of out and out self-analysis, we must follow the mixed path. We should worship the divine, looking upon ourselves as devotees, and also try to analyze our personality into the self and the non-self, consisting of gross and subtle bodies, and then try to identify ourselves with the self, drawing ourselves away from the non-self. This is the double process of worship and analysis to be followed by all. For concentration, most of us need a personal divine ideal or a holy personality, Ishta Devata, but side by side with a meditation on the chosen ideal, we should also try to think of and meditate upon the principle of which this holy personality is a manifestation. Thus we learn to combine meditations on the personal and the impersonal aspects of the divine. Over and above this, we should also have monastic meditations in which we try to separate ourselves from all that is not self, our bodies, gross and subtle. This course is to be followed by all, and it is very essential that we do this time and again. It is also very essential that we have a fixed set of meditations every day, theistic and monastic ones, and these meditations are to be read and repeated every day without any break or change. I do not know whether this is being done or not, but we should make it a point to do it scrupulously as part of our practices. It is a very necessary item of our sadhana, spiritual practice. If on any one day one finds one's body consciousness, one's individuality becoming stronger than usual, then one must meditate on some scriptural passages, especially monastic ones, more than ever. One must have more of a meditation even if one's mind tries to rebel. We should constantly repeat and remember certain important ideas, some fixed passages, again and again. This is far better than having new readings every time. Some of the ideas must be driven deep into us through repeated practice. So during the distresses and affliction that come from the phenomenal world, we should consciously try to draw ourselves away from them and move towards the divine in us. Drawing away from the external world is essential for every really spiritual person, whether he turns all the more towards the divine or not. What worldly people do is just the opposite. Without trying to separate themselves from the phenomenal world through discrimination, they try to move towards God. It is not enough if we are able to separate the little personality from our body and mind, but we should try to connect the finite self with the infinite, the individual with the universal. This is all we can do for the present, as the transcendental, the absolute, the one without a second, is too far off and cannot be reached by us for many, many years to come. We become purer and purer to the extent our identifications with our body becomes less and less. And to the extent we become purer, to that extent our identification with our body also becomes less. These two, purification and detachment, go side by side. It is a case of parallel growth and not of a vicious circle. And to the extent our identification with the whole body is lessened and the process of purification intensified, to that extent we move towards self-realization. In one of the Upanishads there is this passage: making oneself the lower churning piece and Om the upper churning piece, and rubbing them together through the process of meditation, one should see the Lord in his hidden reality. So this is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Mantra 1.14. So this is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Mantra 1.14. Swadeha Maranim Kritva Pradavan Chottararanим Dhyana Nirmathanabhya Sadevam Pashyen Nigudhavat. Making oneself the lower churning piece and Om the upper churning piece and rubbing them together through the practice of meditation, one should see the Lord in his hidden reality. That is, one must go on steadily and perseveringly with one's japa, at the same time concentrating one's mind on the self. This is a double process of worship and self-analysis. Knowledge as thought removes ignorance, and then that knowledge disappears. Knowledge gives the aspirant the true idea of the individual self and the true idea of the universal self, and then brings about their perfect union. After that, it ceases to be, and the absolute is reached, in which there is no knower, knowledge, or the known. Pure infinite consciousness alone remains. The devotee who is dualistic in his approach tries to connect his self to the God. The non-dualist tries to have extreme form of analysis in which all that is non-divine is eliminated and the divine is realized. Both try to deny the ego, to eliminate it, but in different ways. The devotee says, I am nothing, thou art everything. The non-dualist says, my personality is nothing, the infinite is everything. There is a Sanskrit passage conveying this idea. Some people worship thee saying I am thine, some others do it saying I am thou alone. In spite of this little difference in attitudes, the final result of both is the same. So this is from Narahari Bodhasara. Tavasmiti bhajatyekah tvamevasmiti chaparah iti kinchit visheshopi parinamas samodvayoho. So really speaking, the infinite thou is the same as this infinite I. Both lead to the same ultimate realization, only the way of expressing it is different. So also is the approach. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.